Hello everyone, I am the Sci-Fi Junkie and let's talk about science fiction. In this episode we are going to talk about Last and First Men from Olaf Stapledon. And first, if you don't know who Olaf Stapledon is, let me tell you that he is a very famous science fiction writer. Except that he's famous among other science fiction writers or among many sci-fi junkies like me. So he's a very respected in the genre. He was very influential, but sometimes his work is not very famous outside of the genre. And this is one of his first books, Last and First Men, and I'm gonna tell you the good, the bad, and the weird. And let's start first with the weird. The weird thing is that this book, it doesn't have a protagonist. It doesn't even have characters really other than humanity, because this reads as a history book. This book is like a historian, is literally a historian from the future telling you the history of humanity. And it's very interesting. When I picked it up, I thought it was going to be really interesting. Actually, I wanted to get Star Maker. That's probably Stapledon's most famous work, but they didn't have it, so this is the one I got. And so the narrator tells us the story of humanity from somewhere around the year 2000 up to the year 5 times 10 to the 12. I don't even know how to say that number in English. And it's very interesting because in all this huge time span, humanity rises and falls, and humanity even evolves into new species. The first man, the second man, the third man, 4, 5, and so on. And humanity even leaves Earth and goes to live to other planets, but not in the way you think. More on that later. And so it's a very interesting book in that sense. And so when you're dealing with such a huge time scale, there's very little chance to focus on any one character, although Olaf does try to do that sometimes. And so you could argue that the only characters are the species themselves, humanity, as well as the other alien species humanity finds along the way. Now let's go to the bad, because there's quite a few of things I didn't like about this book. First, there's a lot of unintentional racism. Like, it's clear Olaf Stapledon wanted to argue that all people were equal, and that's nice. But at the same time, he has so many prejudices. Literally, like, it's unbelievable. He has prejudices about the French, about the Germans, about the people from the United States, about the Russians, about the blacks, about the Asians, about everyone. He has so many prejudices. And you can see those prejudices very clearly in the book, and sometimes it gets really awkward, and I didn't like that part. I didn't like when he went on those things. Like, he clearly respects people despite those prejudices, but he still has a lot of prejudices. And so actually the first part of the book happens around the year 2000 or something. He's vague about the specific year on purpose, and he starts telling the history of a couple of wars in Europe and wars between China and the United States and stuff like that. And yeah, and this part is where he exposes all these prejudices he has, and it gets very silly. It gets ridiculous at some point. Like, at some point the United States throws some kind of chemical weapon killing literally everyone in Europe. Like, come on. Like, even for one, that's horrible, and second, it's not realistic in any way, and the way the rest of the world reacts to it is like, oh, well, that was something. Like, I don't know. And there's a lot of events, historical events, because this is supposed to be a history book, that are just silly, that are hard to take seriously. Like, a president from the United States has an affair with a black woman, and somehow he ends up being the president of the world because of that. I don't know. So yeah, the beginning, you can skip the beginning of the book. You can skip all the first part about the history of Europe and China and the United States. You can skip it. It's pretty bad, and it's pretty boring. So yeah, that part is racist, and it's not believable, and it's silly, and I didn't like it. But now let's go to the good. because eventually the book has a lot of very good things. So The book starts getting good, in my opinion, around the page 200 or something. That is when humanity finally collapses and evolves into a new humanity. And so we start having the history of all these human species. And this is where the book is really interesting, because it gets you imagining how humanity evolves. And not only humanity evolves, but also the animals evolve. For example, at some point there is this cataclysm that humanity creates. It was actually the reason humanity nearly goes extinct, and he describes that many animals go extinct, many animal species. It's a catastrophe on Earth, but then new animal species evolve, and he describes them for a while, and that part I really enjoy. That it was like, I don't know if you have ever seen those documentaries from National Geographic or the History Channel, where they would show you animals from the future or animals from alien planets. Like, there's literally a documentary called Alien Planet, and there's also some documentaries about evolution in the future. And I as a child, I really loved all those speculative biology, and so there's a lot of that in this book. Not as much as I would like. It has a little of it, but not too much. Well, there's also when he describes the alien species, like the Martians, like a completely different life forms. Oh, that part was actually really good. When the Martians invade Earth, they don't even realize that we are alive, or they don't even realize we are intelligent, because they are a form of life so different from us that they don't even register us as alive. And we do the same. At first, the Martians are like these clouds of particles. And so humanity, the humans, when they see this and see the devastation that these clouds cause in Earth, they think it's some kind of natural phenomenon they had never seen before. They think it's something from nature. And so it takes actually centuries for humans to realize that Martians are intelligent, and for Martians to realize that humans are intelligent. Actually, Martians communicate through radio waves, and so when they find radio towers, they think that those are the dominant species of the planet. They think that those are alive, and actually that was really cool, because it makes you think about how our perception of the universe is shaped by our biology, by our bodies. Like, if we saw alien species, would we even notice that they are alive or that they are intelligent? So that part of the book was amazing. It was really interesting. And then humanity keeps evolving. There's a point in which some humans create these giant brains that are super smart, and those giant brains create other humans that are nearly perfect, and then they have to escape because the moon is going to crash with the Earth, and a bunch of so much stuff happens. I also like that at some point humanity has to, well, I think these were like this 8 humans or the 7 humans at this point, I don't even remember. But they had to escape to the planet Uranus, and then but the expedition goes bad, and so they manage to survive, but barely. They don't manage to establish a colony, and so people devolve, and eventually humans and a few plants and insects that they had in the spaceship evolve to become all the ecosystem of this planet, of planet Uranus, and then they become animals and insects and marine mammals and all this stuff. So it's really cool. It's this planet in which pretty much all the species are descendants from humans or some plants. So that's really cool. It's like, imagine it gets a little disturbing too, because you imagine rats and rabbits and foxes and seals, but all of them are vaguely human because all of them evolved from humans. So it's disturbing, but also it's really interesting. And eventually, well, spoilers for the ending of the book. I don't think it's really a spoiler. I think you can enjoy the whole book without knowing this. I think you can enjoy the whole book even if you know this. But eventually what happens is that humanity finally goes extinct. This writer from the future is writing this record knowing that he's living in the last days of humanity. And it's sad because humanity had finally managed to become a sort of utopia after all this time. And it's really interesting what Olaf Stapledon considers a utopia and what he considers a perfect body and a perfect society. I don't know, it's debatable for sure, but it's interesting. And so it is this historian writing the history of humanity as humanity is about to end, because after all the things that had happened to humanity, there's finally something that we cannot survive. There's finally something that is gonna defeat us. And they are preparing to send some seed ships, like ships that are gonna have cells, and they are gonna send them to other planets so that they can release those bacteria or something in the hopes that they will evolve into new trees of life. And so he says, well, maybe humanity will give birth to something else, to these new species in new planets, but they won't be humanity. This is the end. And that was really cool. And also what happens is that the author explains that telepathically they are sending all these books that they have just written to the past, to some author in the past, but this transmission is not perfect, and so that's why it might not be a perfect explanation of the future. It's a distortion of the message they are trying to send to us. And so yeah, and that was all really interesting. And so on the whole, I'd say that this book is I don't know, I have not think how I'm going to classify these books, how I'm gonna rate them. For now, let's say that I'm gonna rate them in a scale from 1 to 10. So from 1 to 10, this book is a 7. So because it has some really good things, it has some really weird things, and I like weird things, and I like weird things done correctly. But it also has a bunch of bad things, and it can get pretty boring at times. And so yeah, it's not a perfect book, but it's worth a read. It's even better if you skip the beginning, skip the first like 200 pages until you get to the second man, and then if you skip the first part, it's an 8 easily. And so yeah, that was First and Last Man from Olaf Stapledon. And tell me in the comments if you want me to, which book you want me to review next, because it could be The Word for World is Forest from Ursula Le Guin, or it could be We by Yevgeny Samyatin, or it could be, well, I have another video in my channel about the gods themselves, but this is a different format, so maybe I could do it again. Or, oh, even 1984, and I have this very old copy that I really like. So yeah, you tell me which book. It could be some of these, it could be another book, I can get them. And so yeah, thanks for watching.